Hi, this is Dr. John Grazel, another of our videos of synoptic issues to raise concerns that have to be dealt with in much more complexity elsewhere in international development. And today's is on religion and development. And a key issue because in our troubled world today, people are beginning to more and more think that development somehow can help religious conflict. This tape is really about how important religion is to development. Uh, Religious groups have been at the heart of development from its very establishment because they have been among the most motivated providers of assistance to others. And in this sense, to some extent, secular development has exploited them in a kind sense. It's taken advantage in a positive sense of the verve and the desire to help, very often to use religious organizations as deliverers of goods and services and influence for the secular agenda to improve health, to provide better housing, to give education, all of which is very good. But it has not been recognized that the religious groups and people of faith also have a development agenda. And that development agenda is material and spiritual. And while they may share the material one of education and health, they also have a spiritual one, which is not necessarily, and in fact generally isn't, recognized in development. Now, what do I mean by the spiritual agenda? Let me begin with what it is to be human. People who believe in a higher purpose for mankind tend to concern themselves with the characteristics of that higher purpose: human dignity, human nobility, the purpose of our earthly existence, the reference point for our conscience. These are things that secular development puts aside. True religious faith-based development says it's not only we use these, our actions have to bring these into being and promote them, and certainly not work against them. The second thing is, under those are actual capacities: the capacity to be honest, the capacity to be just, the capacity for compassion, for truth, for service, for search. These are all expressions of human nobility, human purpose, human reference. Again, believers believe that these should be an integral part of our objectives for development. One is not just honest because corruption interferes with a good business environment for private sector investment. One has to be honest because being honest is part of nobility, which is part of the human purpose. And then the last one is very interesting. Of all my experiences in almost 3 decades of development, nothing ever succeeds without sacrifice. And sacrifice only occurs when people truly believe in a higher purpose. And a sacrifice could be as small as somebody taking $10 out of their pocket to buy gas where there's no gas, to get the ambulance or the tractor going, to actually, in some cases, sacrificing their lives under difficult circumstances to achieve a greater purpose. And this means that they are a believer and a person of faith. That doesn't mean they ascribe to any particular organized religious group, but it means they have a sense of higher purpose. But the fact is, organized religious groups play an important role in development. Let me go down very quickly to give examples. Buddhism. There's a group called Sarova Daiva, the largest NGO in Sri Lanka, which has been delivering services in Sri Lanka for decades, but does so according to a Buddhist formula about what is a proper life for the individual and the community, and works to actually inculcate that proper life in the individual and the community through its activities. Jewish groups that actually came out of the establishment of Israel and were among the most effective in actual development, such as ORT, but there's a tremendous movement of Jewish philanthropy that really traces itself back to the Jewish prophets and the demand of the Jewish prophets for the need of each individual to be a person of justice, and motivates a great deal of Jewish philanthropy. And the same actually is true of Hinduism. Hinduism, which is so diverse, if you look at the tremendous development activities of Hindu groups and Hindu NGOs, they tend to be inspired by particular individuals. You can call them saints, you can call them gurus, you can look at Mahatma Gandhi, but it's the spirit of that inspiring individual that in many cases drives them forward. The same is not exactly true of Catholic, Protestant, and Islamic groups in the sense that they are inspired by their religious doctrines and faith, but they tend to organize in a more formal fashion around their churches. Catholic relief services, Catholic aid, they tend to be very often directly attached to Catholic institutions and be done in a way that is the Catholic way of doing philanthropy. And in Protestantism, with its diversity, you see the same, but in different forms. So Quakers and Mennonites are particularly organized around issues of peace. On the other hand, are those who believe in it's hard for man to be spiritual when he's hungry. So you have World Vision, one of the largest NGOs in the world, very much concerned in bringing material benefits to underserved population. And in the Islamic world, you have the Aga Khan Foundation, which has done fabulous work all over the Muslim world in many different areas of classic development. And then you have a couple of new players. The thing about the Baha'i faith is the Baha'i faith tends to have what are called Baha'i-inspired development activities. And these are individuals who are inspired by the Baha'i teachings. Now, the Baha'i teachings have very specific things it believes have to come into being in the world. The equality of men and women, universal education for all, a spiritual solution to the economic problem, the end of enormous differentiations between wealth and poverty. And so people who are Baha'i and inspired by the Baha'i teachings tend to want to address those issues. But they're also inspired by the Baha'i teachings because the Baha'i teachings, which say we are particularly here in order to develop capacities for yet another realm, actually such challenges as we find in development give us an opportunity to develop capacities for service ourselves. And that motivates a lot of Baha'i-inspired groups. The Baha'i faith itself actually concentrates on trying to create the spiritual awareness and growth of people themselves and community themselves, so they actually can act in inspired ways, and so that the world, not just individuals and not just particular groups, not just particular experts, but the people of the world themselves, beginning with their own families and their own communities, can begin to reflect those capacities for honesty, justice, compassion, truth, become examples of dignity, nobility, and purpose, and actually be capable of service and sacrifice. But we are beginning to see one or two efforts not of interfaith groups coming together. And that doesn't just mean talking to each other and learning about each other or cooperating, which has existed, but some new interfaith groups that say what's really important is not each of us explaining our particular doctrine, but that core that we all share and want to develop in humanity and want to make a part of all development and mutual aid in the future as both an objective as well as a tool. And that goes back to dignity, nobility, purpose, consciousness, honesty, justice, compassion, truth, service, search for higher meaning, and a willingness to serve and even, as necessary, sacrifice. And this is the major motivation of most successful development projects, even by those who I say don't ascribe to any formal religious doctrine, but in some ways, from my experience, actually believe in the formula of faith, and certainly has to be taken into consideration by anyone who wants to work in development in any community that considers itself religious, considers itself a community of faith, but actually for anyone who wants to work in development and wants to succeed, because it is at the essence of what human beings are and what they're meant to be.